This is Metro Week, our top story, job training for adults. We'll look at a program that gets people into better jobs and ask a graduate how it has shaped his life. Then our Journalists Roundtable analyzes the week's news.
Welcome to Metro Week. I'm Andrea Kelly. Job skills training has become the mantra of those pushing for student success. What about the people already in the workforce who want to do better? One way is JobPath, a Tucson program that trains for new skills and better jobs. JobPath recently released an analysis that shows its success. JobPath is a nonprofit funded by local governments and businesses. It's for adults who have graduated high school or have a GED but who have not completed college. The program provides training through Pima Community College and support from peers and career counselors. The focus is on high-demand fields with growth of at least 25% projected in the next decade. JobPath says that means a benefit to the local economy and a chance of getting hired quickly. The jobs also are in careers that lead to higher pay as employees gain experience. A recent study by Applied Economics shows nearly 8 in 10 graduates of JobPath in the last 5 years are still employed in Pima County. Their incomes doubled or even quadrupled from what they earned before JobPath. The study shows many have also made more since they graduated. The economic impact of these graduates is more than $30 million, according to the study. That figure includes the wages the graduates earned, plus their contribution to the local economy in buying power, sales taxes, and income taxes. Their increased ability to spend also supports creation of other jobs. One of those JobPath success stories is David Lee. He x-rays patients for a local healthcare company, and he shared his story with us. So tell me about how your life was before you started in the JobPath program. What were your prospects? What were you doing?
Prospects. I didn't have many prospects. I was working mainly oddball jobs. I worked at Blockbuster for a little bit while they were open, and then also Advantage West Credit Union. So just basic day-to-day jobs in fields where I suppose I could do a little bit of advancement, but not much.
So how did you find your way to JobPath?
Well, I was going to college, and my college counselor told me about the radiology program, and it gave me a purpose and direction, so I figured I'd start moving in that direction.
So when you heard about it, what made you actually want to choose this as a career path, as opposed to any of the other options that your counselor might have mentioned?
Well, because I enjoy the medical field a lot, and it's not as many fluids as nursing or hurting people as much as nursing is, and she just spoke really highly of it, so it got me interested.
There's also not as many contagious diseases in an x-ray room.
Yeah, well, not here. If I was doing it in a hospital, of course, it's a different environment, but yeah, there's not.
So tell me a little bit more about the process you go through as a JobPath participant, a little bit about the mentoring and the career coaching that you got while you were going through the training.
So I signed up for the program and I was accepted, and while I was in the program we had an orientation for all the first year students, and the second year students came at the end of our orientation and they told us if we're having any trouble with financing or if we need any help to contact certain businesses, and JobPath was one of those businesses. And so I went to JobPath and they made everything really easy. It's something that they had done plenty of times before, helping students with financing. So they did their own little orientation, and I applied for that, and they took me on as a student, and they basically helped me live for the 2 years. So they helped pay for books and my classes. They also helped pay for gas for my car to get me to and from class, and then also to my clinical sites as well. And they also helped pay for food too. They'd give out food cards, which was really nice. Any starving college student would appreciate it.
And you did your training at Pima Community College?
Yes, I did.
Did you get any of those services through PCC, or were they all through JobPath?
I did get some of the services through PCC. The PCC Foundation is also set up to give scholarships as well.
How important was that scholarship to you? and to getting you where you are today?
It's really important. It is basically my full-time job, apart from schooling, was to find scholarships and to find money. It's, just like anybody would be, you're working to pay rent or to pay their car bill. It was the same thing, writing scholarship essays and making myself a candidate for scholarships, pretty much. And JobPath, they were really encouraging too, because they were very much about being involved and making sure, when I would go in there, I would have like a one-on-one with, I guess, my trainer there, and she would basically ask me, like, how are things going? What are things that you need help with? What's coming up? And so they were very encouraging.
How did some of those life skills that you may have learned or picked up through the JobPath mentoring and coaching, how do they apply to your career now as an employee?
I think they helped me be a lot more outgoing, and well, they're very much about community. And when you have that sense, that kind of mentality of community, you're almost like a family, and it makes you want to come to work every day. Because if I don't show up, that means one of my brothers and sisters is going to be having to do my job that I should be doing. So it makes me want to give back. It makes me want to show up and to work hard. And they really helped build that, because they're very much about the community. They're very much about giving to the community as much as they're getting from the community, because they're based off of donations from small businesses around town. So they're very family oriented, and I think that's if you're going to thrive like as a business, I think that being family oriented helps a lot.
So what do you do every day? How do you take all of these things that you learned and come to work every day? What's a day like?
A day is kind of unknown, to be honest. The things I know I am going to be doing is shooting x-rays. I'll get here early in the morning and I'll turn on all the equipment, get settled in, look at my schedule for the day, because in x-ray, not everything is scheduled. We have a lot of walk-ins, and so we can have a fairly easygoing day, or we can have everybody coming in. So my day basically consists of getting everything set up, interviewing my patients, asking them why they're here and what we're doing for them, and then the actual technology portion of the job is taking the x-rays, getting diagnostic images, and then sending them on their way and making sure their doctor gets the correct information so they can get a diagnosis.
What are your opportunities for advancement here in the x-ray field or in the future?
They are immense. That's what they are. X-ray is like the main building block of radiology. And from X-ray, I can move on to computer tomography, which is CT, or magnetic resonance imaging, which is MRI, or also into interventional, as well as ultrasound. So it's very, very expansive as to what I can do with this career. And it also, I can take it with me if I need to travel somewhere. Of course, I enjoy this job I've got here. And just here for an outpatient facility, I have a lot of career opportunities.
So to put this all into perspective, tell me how your life today compares to what your life was like before you started this training program.
It's about a 180-degree difference, to be honest. I think that there are good jobs out there where you can support a family off of, but I don't think they would be near as rewarding as what I've got right now. I found a job that I absolutely love, as well. It's really good. It's a good paying job, and the benefits are great as well. So I feel very comfortable and confident, and I feel like I wouldn't be near as happy as I am today if I hadn't decided to go down this path.
Anything else you want to add?
Just that all of this is like an opportunity of JobPath. Like all of this right here, meeting all of you guys and Derek and working for Radiology Limited and getting this kind of exposure and networking and things like that. It's all from JobPath and the community that they build and the community that they are just very passionate about.
David Lee is among many JobPath graduates with advancement prospects because of the career he chose. To delve a little more into the numbers that back up JobPath's success, I asked Sarah Murley to join me in the studio. She's with the firm Applied Economics, and she wrote the study of what happens to JobPath graduates after they leave the program.
We looked at all of the people who had graduated from JobPath in the past 5 years, of which there are 378, and we looked at their wages at 3 points in time: before they started their training program, immediately after in their first job, and then their current wage. And so it was unique because we were able to look over time and see what had happened to people who had graduated up to 5 years ago and see what they were doing now.
And you've been doing these economic impact studies for JobPath for a few years. What makes this one different?
Well, we do an annual report, and that's just a snapshot in time of those students that graduated that year, what they were doing before the training and what they did immediately after. But this was different because we could look at people over a much longer period of time and see how that training was benefiting them.
And JobPath has been educating people for more than a decade, so I was curious why this report only looked at the last 5 years of graduates.
We had really consistent data in terms of pre- and post-training wages for those people from the past 5 years, and were able to go back and get their current wages through unemployment insurance records. And so that group was the group that JobPath had the best information about.
Can you do any extrapolating from that group of 5 years to say the whole lifespan of the program? Economically, is that something you could do?
Perhaps. Certainly we have, we can see trends changing between people that just finished and people that finished 5 years ago, and so you could make some extrapolations about people who had been out 7 years or 10 years or something like that.
One of the findings in the report that I found most interesting or unique possibly was the percentage of people who still live and work in Pima County. Can you tell us about that number?
Yes, of those 378 people that completed the program, 300 of them are currently working in Pima County, so about 80%, which is a great retention rate, and to me especially important because these have not been years of significant job growth in Pima County, and so there have been people who've migrated out in search of work elsewhere, but to have that many people who remained in the county over that period of time, I think, is really important.
How important is the recession when you're doing these kind of impact studies for other industries? Is the recession usually something you see a dip in, and how does that compare to JobPath?
I think that JobPath, while their graduates certainly felt the impacts of the recession, the types of occupations that they are placing people in healthcare, for example, are occupations that have done better on average perhaps than other industries during the recession. So they have benefited from having that occupational focus.
And how important is that going forward as they continue to look at those high demand fields?
Because of aging of the population, of course, those fields are projected to continue to grow in Arizona. The projections go out 10 years from the state, and so I think that maintaining a focus in those areas where not only can they place people as they finish the program, but also those people, because they're in demand, are able to garner wage increases as they gain experience and become more valuable in that industry is good for the economy and, of course, good for those individuals.
What was one of the most notable elements of economic impact when you looked at this group of former JobPath students, graduates?
Well, I think in the case, about half of the people that complete JobPath are in nursing, either RNs or LPNs, or they're in dentistry, either dental assistants or dental hygienists. And the increase from their pre-training wage, which in some cases they were unemployed, to even what they got upon completing the program and then looking at where they're at now, some of these people tripled or even quadrupled their pre-training wage. And that is a huge increase over a relatively short period of time, 5 years, 6 years, going back to their pre-training time.
Tonight on Arizona Week, the Border Strike Force, a statewide effort to stop drug and human smuggling.
Well, this isn't a war on a plant or a chemical. This is a war on the people that are supplying it to Americans.
Now our Journalist Roundtable. Joining me in the studio today are Mari Herreras of the Tucson Weekly and my colleague Zach Ziegler. Zach, let's start with you. What do these types of training programs mean for the industries in which those JobPath students go on to work?
Well, it can often mean a chance to grow those particular industries. If you have a viable workforce in place, it gives you a reason to expand. It makes it easier. You're not having to, for lack of a better term, overpay someone just because that's the demand of the demand of how many people there are willing to do the job. So in a place like medicine, that can be a very big deal for Tucson or Arizona.
And Mari, are these kinds of jobs in healthcare, like nursing, lab technologist, medical coding and billing, dental hygiene, are those the kinds of employees that Tucson employers say they need?
Yeah, we hear that all the time, that we've folks at other job fairs in the past have said that they're still looking for good accredited healthcare providers. We're this interesting migration community. You know, we have a community of folks that are in and out. Most of those folks are older, on the older range, and that kind of guarantees that, you know, healthcare folks are always going to be needed in Tucson, and they're better wage jobs as well, and that's good for Tucson too.
And Zach, we're talking about not the top of the food chain, I guess, in the healthcare industry. We hear a lot about a doctor shortage. We've talked about it on this show in recent weeks. So how does this kind of education, this kind of training play into the big picture with doctor shortages?
Well, it helps out in the sense that if you're short a radiologist, as someone like David Lee, who you spoke with, he means that the radiologist doesn't have to be in the room doing the x-rays. He frees up a little bit of time for the doctor so that there's not as much of an issue with getting to everything that needs to be done. Doctors can become more of a manager, maybe focus specifically on diagnostic type work. So that's where these people who aren't going to med school can come in and help ease the scenario a little.
As we still look to try and train doctors through the university system.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mari, we often hear local officials talking about the need for higher paying jobs in the Tucson area. And so I'm curious about these jobs that are not, you know, minimum wage, but they're not the doctors. How does that play into the Tucson economy?
Well, those are the ones we need the most. I mean, we would all love to have as many of these six-figure salaries as possible, but with this being a traditional, historic, low-wage community, in order for real economic growth, we need those middle-wage jobs. We don't minimum wage and those six-figure salaries that we would all love, but you know cannot attain yet. We need more of these other regular middle-income, upper-income jobs and salaries. That's really where the growth needs to happen.
And these people can really perpetuate further growth. Someone who goes from making below the median income to above, as could be the case in this, even just slightly above, that quite often can mean, yes, that person's going to save some money, but they're also going to be more likely to go out to dinner to a local restaurant. They're going to be more likely to take in services for someone else in the community, you know, hire someone to do their landscaping, do their maid work, things like that. That can really help drive the economy even another step, because if you have a particularly high wage job and you already are taking advantage of all those amenities, all extra money in your paycheck is going to mean is it's going to go into investments or savings.
And that's what we mean when we say that there's indirect job creation when you employ students who come out of programs like JobPath. Mari?
You know, we're also a city of many small businesses. You know, the restaurants, small restaurants, and service industry businesses. Those businesses themselves, they're not huge money makers. These are people who are really invested in this new life, this new business that they've formed, and are putting their heart and soul into that. And those businesses get supported by these kinds of jobs. And we rely on, I mean, our newspaper relies on those small businesses to support the weekly, and we all rely on those businesses in many ways. And the only, you know, the catch-22 or whatever is to have more of those of those kinds of wages, and people going out to dinner and going and having pizza at Rocco's or wherever, and you know, he would appreciate it, and as others would, and you know, it's part of what makes this a vibrant community. Six-figure salaries certainly are great, but those other folks going out in downtown and celebrating the city, it really does depend on those medium wage jobs or medium income jobs. I'm not sure if I'm using the right terms.
And Zach, you shared an anecdote about your own personal connection to this need for healthcare jobs. I want to ask you to share that here instead of just in our newsroom.
My wife's a physical therapist, and I'll routinely go out and cover job fairs to just find out a little bit about who's hiring, what industries are growing. And the running joke is every time I do that and I talk to people about, oh yeah, my wife's a physical therapist, I walk out of those places with 3 or 4 job offers for her.
Really? Not for you, for her.
Yeah, for her. My wife's a physical therapist. Oh really, where's she work? That's what routinely happens, and it just goes to show the need for medically trained individuals. Now granted, a physical therapist is a step beyond, you know, it's post-baccalaureate studies, but there are also people in programs such as, you know, the community colleges or JTED. They're going through physical therapy assistant, physical therapy technician work that can help ease the burden on a physical therapist.
Now, you're talking about job fairs, but you also cover a lot of the startup efforts, the efforts to start new businesses in Tucson, as Mari mentioned, the small businesses. So what's the connection? Are we seeing people trying to start businesses in these career fields in Tucson, or is it just mostly funneling employees to existing big employers like Radiology Limited?
There is always a chance to try and start something up or even grow things from the small scale to a larger scale. I was covering an event, Startup Tucson has a 10-week mentorship program, and one of the companies that they just announced going through this cohort is a company called By Your Side. They do at-home health care for someone who, you know, maybe has trouble getting around the house but doesn't want to go to assisted living. You can get some assistance from this company, and there's really a chance they see, or the people at Startup Tucson see a lot of growth potential for someone like that. You know, the baby boomer population, they're 50s, even getting up as old as 70. That's getting to be an age group that will require, you know, that's more people who will require more assistance as time goes on. So this is an industry that's only going to keep growing, and I've also heard from people such as the National Realtor Association of Realtors that our population here in that age group will only get bigger as stock portfolios recover and people can now start to say, well, maybe it's time to retire. The people who are back east in the Northwest going through a nice severe winter right
or
now.
A few of those.
Yeah, right now our 70 to 80 degree temperatures look real nice, so they might start moving down into this area. That's another way that our economy gets a little boost, but it will also once again create more of a need for these kind of jobs.
I'm going to make a little slight shift here and move to talk about the JTED program, the Joint Technical Education District Career in Tech Ed for high school students. This JobPath program we've been discussing for the show up to this point is for adults who've already gone through high school or have a GED. But JTED is for high school students. And Mari, we talked a few weeks ago about the prospects for it actually losing funding or getting some funding back, and that came to a head at the legislature this week. So give us a primer on what the legislature did. It's kind of a long process, so just kind of start at what they were considering early in the week.
Well, early in the week, there was the consideration, it was gone. There was no longer going to be that $30 million, about $28 million in JTED funding. Instead, we were going to have a new program that the governor created by the governor's office, a $10 million grant program, giving out grants to students or schools that get matched with a business. The thing is that that didn't go over so well with folks like the chambers. And granted, schools and superintendents had been reminding folks that this was going to look like it was going to be happening, and not so happy about it before the budget passed in the middle of the night. Then
a year ago.
A year ago, right. So we have now folks who've come to about 72 legislators. Don Shooter, Republican lawmaker, led the charge to get those folks to sign a letter to say we need to restore this funding. And it was between this group of legislators as well as a group of business folks, again, the chamber's taking a lead as well, trying to put pressure to get the governor to restore funding. And that's coming to before the governor in the form of a new law to restore that funding that he finally agreed to, that he would sign.
And that was a little bit of a dramatic process. Can you take us through the ins and outs of that a little bit, Zach? You were watching those hearings.
Yeah, I was watching the hearings. We had supposedly heard initially that the program that Mari had mentioned, there was talk that would be going through at least the Senate, I believe it was, on Wednesday. Well, all of a sudden it was removed from the schedule. On Thursday, we see this pretty much a full restoration of funds put out, and it went through the Senate very quickly on a unanimous vote, with the exception of a couple of people stopping to explain their vote as, oh, this is so great, and then two Tucson Democrats taking the chance to kind of say an I told you so, when they basically said, yeah, we asked for this last year and then again in the special session. It's great that we're coming back to it now, though. And so it moved right through after that. Now it heads to the House. There is a similar bill in the House that has bipartisan sponsorship. So that seems like a pretty likely scenario.
Well, part of the reason why, at least, some thoughts behind why were these lawmakers before, right? Where
the 72 who now,
right,
who now
right.
support it.
Where were they before the budget was passed? And part of it is that the formula, evidently, in understanding
Funding formula for JTED or for the whole budget?
For the whole budget,
okay.
And is problematic and complicated. And so what a lot of them thought they were getting, again, from what I understand, was that it was only going to be 7%, and not the 30 million. So that's been one side that I've heard is part of the reason why they didn't think it was going to be that big deal. Plus the way the budget was passed to begin with, you didn't have that time that's needed in previous budget seasons. You'd have that session where you can have stakeholders come forward and discuss the different items on the budget and say to lawmakers, this probably isn't such a good idea. There was no opportunity for that this time around.
No public comment period.
Yeah, there wasn't that period. And boy, that probably would have been something to explain to lawmakers. We elect these people thinking, well, they know about budgets and they know everything and how this whole thing works, but most of them don't.
Right, they come from jobs that are not necessarily budget-centric, and
Right.
then we charge them with writing the
Right.
state budget.
Right.
So it sounds like it's not necessarily a change of heart among those lawmakers, but potentially a change of understanding, or even maybe being faced with not passing the whole budget. You're going to go ahead and pass that budget and work on this one line item later.
We also have a governor that works a little differently. Is it hubris? Is it just stubbornness? This guy operates a little differently too, and that may be something that they're all still getting used to.
So, but it does sound like he had a change of heart, because earlier in the week he said, I'm not going to approve this funding, and then now he's saying he will. So do we have any indication of what led to that change?
I guess from what I understand, Biggs went in and had a long conversation with him, and didn't think it was going to happen, and it did. There was some give and take of a few things that they tweaked that he agreed to, and they agreed to go forward. But for the most part, it still is most of the funding in place. I believe that one of the changes that they agreed to had to do with the classes that were offered and what students had that students could take. And so they all agreed to that, and that shook hands and made everybody feel better. So that was one of the things that I'd understood.
And then just to kind of state explicitly what this agreement was. So in the budget that was approved last year, there was a $30 million cut from JTED. And then this new plan would give back, would restore 28 million of that cut. So there would be in total $2 million cut from JTED.
Right.
All right. And thanks for watching. Remember, you can always catch up on the news of the week, comment on our show, or catch up on episodes of other Arizona Public Media TV shows on our website. I'll see you next week.